raise a family, they have some of the same opportunities that me and my wife.
You agreed that we need to see them as a terrorist organization.
On a private cloud server, yes or no?
To love country, to love God, and to try to do the right thing.
Worked for the nation and the interests of the people. Welcome back to the Fresh Freedom Podcast with freedom-loving freshman members of Congress. My name is Eric Burleson from Missouri, and I'm joined today by Representative Josh Burchett from Oklahoma, Eli Crane from Arizona, and Tim Burchett from Tennessee.
Burchett. Birch like the tree and et like I just ate dinner. Burchett.
Well, so before we get started, I want to give a shout out to President Donald J. Trump, who shared a clip of our podcast on Truth Social defending when Eli was defending him or brought it up. So if you want to see that, go back and watch episode 2. President Trump, Fresh Freedom Crew stands behind you while you're dealing with all of this crazy nonsense. And with that, I want to say welcome to Tim Burchett.
Tim.
Hey, baby. Woo! What's up? Pleasure to be here.
Just so you guys know this, they're watching, this is the only dude on the entire House floor that has his own seat. It's not really his, but if you sit in his seat, you'll lose it.
You're out.
That's right, dude.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the shout out. Yeah. I call it Sinner's Row. Generally, people, you're the first one that sat beside me that had been in trouble. Every time somebody gets in trouble.
You're almost the backseat Baptist because it's like, it's not the back row, but it's right there.
You know why I sit by you, man? Make me
lonely. Really?
Make me laugh every day, dude.
All right, well.
Zero pressure with this guy, dude. You know?
That's cool.
Like a lot of these politicians up here.
Yeah, life's too short, brother.
Talking about guns, his horses.
Technically, my daughter's horses, if she's watching, I just write the check for them, brother.
I thought you were getting donkeys.
I got donkeys, man. Yeah. First Amendment, baby. I got freaking donkeys. I got 3 of them. My wife calls me on the phone, and she's got me on the FaceTime or whatever, and I'm like, where are y'all at? They're in the back of some guy's truck, and she says, and Isabel says, Dad, they're giving us 3 donkeys. And I thought, oh, great. 3 more freaking mouths to feed.
They're boiled. You donkey.
They're pretty cool. They just drink water and eat briars off the row, and it's okay. So I'm all right. But you can't eat a dadgum donkey. That's another thing I don't like.
Yeah, I don't know how that would taste.
They're a little tough. I understand.
Okay, so question that we've asked each other here. So when you go back home...
How do I keep incredible good looks all these years?
I know. You say that the camera
Genetics. It's genetics, baby. The camera makes love to me. I think everybody watching this knows that right now. But please.
Oh, my God.
No, so when you go back home, what is the number one questions that you get asked back home?
I don't know. When I first got elected, I've been here 5 years, or 6 years, I guess, whatever. I said, they always asked me what was my biggest surprise. My biggest surprise was I wasn't surprised. I knew what it'd be. I knew the egos, and I knew people lie and cheat and steal, and it's no different than politics anywhere else in the world. And I knew, I was sitting there one time I used to sit on the second row, and then COVID broke out and everything. January 6th happened, and I was sitting on the second row, and I thought, I'm not going to get my ass kicked back here. So I moved back to the back when they come through the door, and I waited. I was technically the last House member to leave the House floor during all that. But
on the January 6th.
January 6th. But what was your question? I don't know. I started talking again.
What did people ask you about?
Oh, yeah. About, am I surprised? And I'm not surprised. But, some of the old timers said to me one time, they kind of paid me a compliment. They said, how long you been here, Tim? And I said, just 1 year. And they said, really? And I said, yeah. And I said, you don't act like it. And I said, well, thanks. I said, I know the president's not going to call me to negotiate a trade deal with North Korea, unlike the rest of these knuckleheads in here after they get elected. Everybody runs in here and they're, you're 435. Yeah. And the whole system's corrupt. Literally both parties, if we can be honest here. You got to raise money in the caucus and y'all don't have to agree to this. You don't have to shake your head like you're agreeing with. I don't want to get you in trouble with leadership or anything. But, you have to raise money to move up in the leadership structure. Peyton Manning would still be waiting to get in if he was, if this was the NFL. It's a crooked system. It's just the way it is.
Merit-based, based on your expertise.
You ask somebody, a chairman of a committee, how much money is in a bill, what's it cost them? They don't know. One of the staffers will find out for you. I mean, you know.
You mean how much they're spending in that bill?
Yeah, how much? Yeah, I'm sorry, the fiscal note or the
Not how much-
physical note, as some of the good old boys would say. But yeah, but you know, it's just, and both parties do that. I mean, they literally issue a bill on a piece of paper, and then you know, and the press is in on it. They all know it, and so I mean, it's just the system is crooked, and that's just the way it is. And you know, our job is to change that at some point. I would hope it would be some sort of merit based. And I realize you got to raise money, but I mean, there's been Congress people that have literally written a check and become chairman of a committee.
You guys are starting to see why I sit by this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the truth, you know. That's probably why I'll never be in leadership. And honestly, I don't want to be in leadership. I remember I was in the state legislature, and they're like, "Oh, you need to." I go, "I don't want to be in leadership. You got to get up every Wednesday morning and have breakfast with the governor. If I want to talk to the governor, I'll go see him." You know, it just never appealed to me, the titles and stuff. So, but it's cool if you know, people different motivations. But sorry, I didn't mean to ambush you or anything.
So of all the experiences have you had, was January 6th like the most interesting, or what's the most interesting experience you had?
I don't know. I remember when I was, you know, I'm from Tennessee, and we have what's called the Tennessee Valley Authority. It, you know, provides electricity for the surrounding states. And I was in the White House. President Trump, I guess, had called everybody from Tennessee in there, but I was the only one that showed up because they were going to rail on TVA, and that's kind of a sacred cow, and I don't have a sacred cow. And they pay the head of TVA $8 million a year.
What's TVA?
Tennessee Valley Authority. It was created during the Depression. Everybody says the Great Depression, but it wasn't great. It was awful. During the Depression, you know, it provided flood control, fertilizer, and electricity. And they took a lot of poor people's property, and then later they turned around and sold it to rich people. And I'm not a big fan. I mean, you know, they had an original mission, and I feel like they've gone. And when you pay a head man or woman of any organization $8 million a year, and so Trump was railing on them. So I always rail on them. So they asked me. I really didn't know what was going on, and I'm sitting there in the Roosevelt room, and Pence I saw Pence out, Vice President, and I knew him, and we talked, and then I go in, and it's this huge table, and President Trump walks in. He's sitting across from me, all these TVA employees, and they were getting fired because, and they were being forced to train the person that was going to take their job. And these people were from out of the country, and that turns my stomach. Mm-hmm. And it turned Trump's stomach, and President Trump. And he goes, and he started talking, he goes, $8 million a year. He goes, Tim, you'd do this job for $8 million a year, wouldn't you? And I said, 1 year, Mr. President. And he kind of smiled, and I go, you better make that 2. You don't know my wife and daughter. And he busted out laughing. Pence busted out laughing. It just kind of a wildfire. And then the crazy liberal media behind us, they were all laughing. They were just shaking. I thought, oh crap, my wife and daughter are going to see that. I'm in trouble, you know. And then, but then I got out, and you know, and then he invited me into the Oval Office and signed something, and I talked to him about some veterans issue. I had an issue with the VA, and it was on a suicide hotline, and they were putting people on hold. And that, I'm not a veteran. I have friends that are, and you know, Daddy fought in the Pacific, and Mama lost a brother fighting the Nazis. I mean, that turns my stomach. Mm-hmm. Brother-in-law's a Marine sniper, and so he looks at me and says, and I told him, he said, what are you working on, Tim? And I told him, and he said, well, what do you want me to do about it? And I said, fix it, Mr. President. Oh, he said to his guy, his handler, he said, is this true? And the guy goes, I don't know, Mr. President. He goes, what do you want me to do about it, Tim? I said, fix it, Mr. President. He looked at the guy and said, fix it now. He said, follow me. Walked out, boom, called, did it. No, you know, he didn't have to get some crazy committee. And one other time,
That's awesome.
I'm trying not to ambush y'all's show, but I was in the Rose Garden.
Oh no, it's your show now.
Well, Tim Burchett show. Thank you all for joining me. No, but so I'm in the Rose
Tim
Garden.
Burchett.
Tim Burchett, or who is Thomas Massey says you ought to have something called fish fillets with Tim Burchett. You know, have fish fillets with Tim Burchett, whatever. But anyway, so I'm in the Rose Garden, right? And it's a NASCAR thing. They're honoring NASCAR. And the head guy, the owners there, and these kids, that are working in the White House and stuff, they don't know which end the gas goes in and which end the exhaust goes out. And I'm a motorhead, you know. I turn a wrench, and I like motorcycles and cars.
You got how many motorcycles?
Had over 100 when I married my wife. I'm down to 25 now, officially. So,
What kind?
Just 25.
How many of them does she know about?
well, she knew because when I married her, I sold 65 in one day at auction. I have Triumphs, BSAs. It's called Birmingham Small Arms. The British motorcycle is one of the top ones in the world at one time. One of the fastest bikes in the world. And I have the last year. It's called an A65, 1972. It's has the gas tank looks like a loaf of bread. And I've got some rare bikes called Mustangs that were made after the Second World War, and several Triumph Bonnevilles, some Cushmans.
Where are the Triumphs made?
England.
That's weird, man. I would have pegged you for a made in the USA guy.
Well, I am. It's just American allies. But my coolest one is an American made. It's a 1947 Indian Chief, which is identical to my mama. My dad, after he got out of the Pacific in the Second World War, he bought an Indian with what they called mustering outpay, and he brought it home in a crate, put it together on the kitchen floor in his mama's and daddy's house, rode it, raised hell with that, and then he sold it to buy my mama her wedding ring. So I gave my wife that wedding ring, and I have a 1947 Indian Chief. Kind of did the full circle, which is really cool. But anyway, what were we talking about?
So do you trick your bikes out? Is this you riding down the highway?
No,
kick back with your black leathers?
Yeah, ape hangers.
No, it's this little weak sauce European bike. Dude.
No, they're not weak. You got to fight all mine. They all have.
You have all
they're all kick starts. They all leak
Japanese
oil.
ones.
They leak gas. And
You practically have to have a man bun to drive, own one and drive one, dude.
No. These bikes are old bikes, and they're cool.
So Tim, we're gonna get to UFOs.
Because Evel Knievel, that's what he used was a Triumph. You know, everybody, he Triumph and Harleys. Go ahead, we'll talk about.
We're gonna
UFOs.
get to UFOs, but before we do, topic of the day, two topics, is the Title 42 and the investigation into the Biden family. So you guys are closer to the border. How is Title 42 impacted? Like when you went back home, did you go back?
I didn't. I stayed here this weekend.
But I can't imagine.
But it's a disaster like everybody knew it would be. You know, I mean, what do you expect? It was already a disaster, you know, worst immigration that we've ever seen in this country, and then you lift Title 42. It's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. You know, so I mean, what can we say? I mean, we passed a good border bill out of the House this week. We'll see what the Senate does with it. But other than being able to tee off on Secretary Mayorkas and some of these hearings, me and Josh got a chance to question him a couple weeks ago. I mean, you know, it's like one of the things we're talking about now is trying to impeach Secretary Mayorkas, and it'll be interesting to see because I don't know if this conference has the backbone to do it. What do you think, Tim?
No, I don't. I think they'll come close. I think, but you'll probably have a few pull off.
But if anybody deserves it,
it's
this guy. I mean, he sits in front of both the House and the Senate, and he lies.
And it really makes us as a country look very weak.
Well, I held up in front of him 11 different, identified by the Homeland Security Committee, 11 different areas of federal law that he has violated. One of those is the parole authority, which used to be on a case-by-case basis, where it's 30,000 quota a month, 4 nations, and it lowers the numbers. So, to willfully not execute the laws of this land under part of the administration, but he's just answering to the guy who's in the presidency, who ultimately the buck stops with him. So we've got to deal with both of them. And we all know the Senate most likely wouldn't do anything because it's controlled by the Democrats. But I think the American people are saying at least move it forward. And I think for all of us that don't like theater, I don't want theater, but action, I think it is important to advance impeachment.
I wonder
and if you can do it, expedite it, and expedite it, and not, but just a clear statement. You can't do this. It's about the rule of law. No president, no member of the executive is above what federal law.
Let's say the Senate passed the bill that we sent over there, and then he just totally ignores it like he's doing with the law today. What's to stop him from, if they're not going to follow the law that we passed, then what's the point?
You have no
Which is
country
why he
without
needs
rule
to
of
be
law.
impeached.
That's why we need to impeach him.
And some will argue, well, hey, they'll just appoint somebody as bad or worse. But then we'll deal with that individual when we get there. But there has to be, I mean, we have to stay on offense, and we have to hold these guys accountable. I mean, the American people, they know that they can't go and do the exact opposite of what their job description is and not be held accountable for it. But that's one of the reasons they hate this town. They hate politicians because they know that there's one set of standards for them and a completely different setup here.
100%.
If we don't start holding people accountable to the constitutional adherence, and like you said, this is a glaring example. So the rule of law has to matter.
So speaking of holding people accountable, we've got oversight committee. That's the job of oversight, and we have had our hands full. Like it's a lot of work. Tim, did you go to the Treasury Department to look yet?
I sure did. I was in the first group that went. I didn't go back today because I knew it was more of the same stuff. It's just, I mean, it's $10 million.
Here and there.
Yeah, I mean, $10 million. We know they've been paid. The Biden family and their associates have been paid $10 million for what? Nobody knows. They've set up over 21 LLCs, primarily after Biden was in office. There's family.
Most of them were while he was vice president.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, after he was already in office, they weren't prior to it, so it wasn't like, oh, these are existing. And I've stated that, when they went to mob school, the Biden family was asleep during money laundering class because, I mean, it's pretty lame, really.
If we can figure it out.
Yeah, that's what my whole point was. But the mob used to buy, they used to do, have flower stores and things because cash-heavy businesses, you could just run it through, and that's laundering and laundromats and things, and that's where the term laundering came from. And this group, it just shows their arrogance. The one point I've made on Fox and everything is Romania. Everybody's focusing on China, but Romania shows their arrogance. They were Biden, the vice president, was lecturing in Romania, lecturing them on ethics and the way they need to conduct themselves, and his dirtbag son was collecting over $1 million at that time, and it's just follow the money. It is so pathetic, and what's more pathetic, I don't know what's more pathetic, the FBI refuses and the Justice Department refuse to investigate, or the major media is just ignoring this whole thing. They've spent more, the Justice Department and the media combined have spent more time covering George Santos, who's relatively small potatoes in this whole scheme of things. You're talking about a vice president of the United States who has received over $10 million, he and his family. And then you look at, well, what have they done?
Well, and that does not include the money that was sent to the Bo.
Yeah, that's just, the
foundation.
very,
There's
the
$20
foundations.
million sent to the foundation.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Tim. Do you think...
Tim, before
Go ahead.
to finish that is, we don't even know how much money that they have in foreign accounts.
Oh yeah, I mean, you will
we don't
never
have
find
access
that. You
to
will
the
never
foreign
find that
accounts.
stuff because that'd be wired from a foreign entity to another foreign entity, and we wouldn't be able to unless they would disclose that to us. So I mean, it's there. I look at what China has been able to do in this country, and they have a police force that operates here. They work within our education system. They flew a freaking 1800s balloon over our country, transversed it, reversed, back and forth, went over missile silo sites, went over secret missile sites that aren't public, went over in my backyard, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, went over Fort Campbell, Kentucky, we're a military installation, and then we're told Leon Panetta, remember that name? He was Obama's CIA director, and his chief of staff said we should have knocked it down over the Aleutian Islands. We wait till it goes off the coast of Myrtle Beach, and they say, oh, they're afraid it's going to hit somebody. Well, it was more likely to hit some redneck with a mullet and a tie-dyed T-shirt on a shrimp boat off the coast of Myrtle Beach than it was in the Aleutian Islands or coming through Montana, where it's just so sparse. There's more people working the Pentagon than live in Montana. I mean, it's those kind of numbers that boggle my mind, and you think, well, have they infiltrated to the top of the highest level? They have. Absolutely, they have. Absolutely. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother. You were going to say something.
No, I was one of the things that, because these docs have been over at Treasury, this is one of the things that scares me the most about where this country is at. I don't think for a second that insiders in the DOJ haven't known about some of this stuff. You know, it's like and when you go back and you look at how many people and how many high positions have straight up covered for this man, and I think it's because they know they own him. They know that they can, move him, prod him, position him,
I've
just
had
like a little
conversations
puppet.
with him. He doesn't. There's no the cognizant level is not there. I mean, it's very obvious to me that he is not there, and that whoever's pulling the strings, you're exactly right. I always talk about the swamp. It's not like on The Simpsons where it's 6 white guys sitting at a table, deciding where it's going. It's the machine. It's the people in these offices that jobs depend upon it and that are shady as hell. And they do not have any.
And they're all building their silos and their empires, and they just want to grow their budget.
It's not normal for somebody
power.
to make a 76% return on their stocks every time. Every time. That's the thing. And there's a lot to it, but anyway, Eli's right.
So we teased it. So one of the things that you've been pushing in oversight, you and Anna Luna have been pushing Chairman Comer to do a committee hearing on UFO, what do they call them?
UAPs, but I call them
UAPs.
UFOs. I don't
UFOs.
care. That's just another thing to throw everybody off the track, I think. But,
That's kind of like how they say, don't call it food stamps. It's not food stamps anymore.
I call it food stamps. I'm not going to coupons. I don't know what are those politically correct stuff. Yeah, you want me? I go back naturally. Every night I walk out in my backyard and I take my dogs out to go to the bathroom. And I look at those dadgum stars, and I look at them and I think, wow. I said the light from those stars, some of those left there before the time of Christ. Yeah. And in the vastness of God's universe, do you honestly think we're the best He can do? And people say, well, that offsets Christianity. No, it doesn't. No, it absolutely does not. You read your Bible, first chapter of Ezekiel, and it's a King James version, which we're all reading, which is the oldest, but it was written in a different format before they got it. And it describes a craft, a wheel within a wheel, which you would normally think a saucer. And
this is what Ezekiel saw, right?
Ezekiel saw the wheel. Okay. Yeah, in first chapter of Ezekiel. Go back and read it. And you can read all the ins and outs of it. And people say what he really meant, but I read the Bible. I believe it. I don't have if the Bible says that He knows how many hairs on your head, He knows sparrow falls from the sky. Dadgummit. I guess He can figure that kind of stuff out, and I'm not worried about it. If they have the technology, we have pilots. If you can go on the internet, and I hate to do that, but there's a YouTube video on TikTok, not Tic Tac, not the Chinese communists, TikTok, and it's a 60-minute special, and they had Navy pilots, best pilots in the world.
Oh, you don't have to go on TikTok. You could go find that on YouTube. 60 minutes.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. On YouTube, it's called Tic Tac, like the candy.
Oh, Tic Tac, yes.
Tic Tac, like the candy.
Because they're talking about
they
what they all
look like a Tic Tac, and you have the Navy pilots. Well, we have this dadgum hearing, and
can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Because I want my kids to watch this and know that Dad's biblically accurate too. I believe in angelic host.
Yeah.
I believe in a real God and angelic host. I don't know that I'm where you're at. I'm not sure exactly.
I forgive you. I wasn't always there either.
Like, I wasn't always there either. Josh, it's okay.
But here's the deal. Here's the deal. I've talked to too many Navy pilots, and I was told at the hearing, the one intelligence hearing that we had that was open to the public, and they had these 2 knuckleheads, and they couldn't even spell UFOs that are in charge of the investigation. And I was told I was going to ask a question. I was asked a very specific question about an incident. They didn't have a clue. Dude, they had a video, and it was inside the canopy of an airplane, and a guy had a cell phone. It was going like this, and he was filming something. Adam Schiff, of all people, I know you say his name, it's not sacred to say his name, but he had the best question of the whole night. He said, what exactly am I looking at? And those knuckleheads, those 2 guys, could not tell what he was talking about. And then they said, can you slow the video down? Most technologically advanced country in the world, mind you. Listen, Isabel Burchett could have stopped that. My little girl could have stopped that video and showed them how to do it. They couldn't even slow the video down to show them what we were supposed to be looking at. All these great videos out there. And I walked by the press. I was the only congressman there. They had a seat, and and they were told me I was going to get to speak, and I was kind of moving towards it, thinking, well, I'm going to get to speak when I ask my question. And then I got up to them, and they go, no, you're not going to be able to ask a question. And then it's all over, and I was like, oh, are you not going to let the pilot speak? And the pilot, they wouldn't even let him come in. This Navy pilot who's on the Tic Tac videos, he was there. The press had given him credentials, and I walked by the press, and I said, Congressman, what do you think just happened? I said, we got hosed, and we did. And one of the members comes and says, Burchett, don't you think we got more important things to do? And that's always the standard line. What's more important than something we do not control in our airspace that we've had 13 documented close almost collisions, mid-air collisions? What's one of those aircraft cost, Eli? 13, 14 million, maybe 20 million?
Way more than that now.
Okay, yeah. Collisions. And
You'd
these are
be lucky to
pilots.
get one for
I've talked to pilots who've said, I destroyed the evidence. I destroyed my tape because I didn't want to be pulled out and be debriefed for 8 hours and then have to go through the ringer. We need to get to the bottom of it. It's not Chinese. If it's a communist, if it was Russia, Putin would land a UFO on the front steps of the White House. He'd get out, ride a unicorn over, punch out Joe Biden, get back in, bare-chested, mind you, get back in UFO flyback. Chinese did it, they'd own us. This stuff is out there. We need to get to the bottom of it. And I've talked to too many military people. I've talked to too many people that have diagnosed and analyzed unknown materials. And so we've got a real problem in this country. There's a cover-up. Every time they issue a report, it's always redacted. It looks like, and I issued this is how I got to be the guy on it, because TMZ asked me about the report, and I said, dude, more people believe in UFOs than believe in Congress, and that's on my T-shirt on my website. And it was a big seller, by the way. And so all of a sudden, now I'm like, you know, every day I'm getting a call from somebody that wants to meet, and you know,
You just kind of put that vibe off, Tim.
I really do. It's uncanny, but no, it ticks me off.
Could it be military? Could it be? I mean, there was stuff 20 years ago that Russia was doing that we later found out was Russia.
If something happened, Roswell, New Mexico, 1947, there was a alleged UFO crash. Then they came back and the military issues a press release and says saucer recovered. Next day, no, it's not a saucer. It's a dadgum hot air balloon. Now, give me a freaking break. And then they said, you know, they'd recovered bodies. And then they come back and they had this overweight Air Force officer who was cocky, and it said Roswell case solved, you know, in the 90s or something. I remember my daddy was still alive. He was watching it with me, you know, the thing is just it's been a cover up from day one. It's control. You know, they won't even release the Kennedy files. I mean, imagine that. There's nobody alive that had anything to do with it. You know, it's just there's power and there's money, there's technology, and you know, and they're not going to release it. Military possibly, could be skunk works, could be reversed engineered, except for the fact that these craft that are on the it's public record, and I know the guy who leaked it, who had it leaked, so because they said it didn't exist, and then they said, well, what about these? Oh, they don't exist, and then they came back and said, well, yeah, they do, and so. Now here's the trouble you got with the people at the Pentagon. I know you got to go.
No, it's okay.
But the Pentagon they're gonna come around and say, oh, we think this could be something. Send us $1 billion, you know. And the Pentagon that should be you conservatives. You need to start asking questions about the dadgum Pentagon. There are no sacred cows. When they lose over $1 billion in their audits and nobody questions it,
right.
That's a problem.
They fail their audit every time.
Every time, and they expect them to do it.
How many years has it been since they've actually completed an audit or had a?
I have no earthly idea.
Decades, right?
Man, the audience is just getting a show tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but
I love it, dude.
I'm passionate
People
about it.
back in my district love the Freshman Freedom podcast, and they just got Tim.
Well, I'm no freshman.
Burchett.
But you know, I'm not much into filters, but I don't trust the government, and I am the government, and I've seen it. I've been at every level. I've been
either.
16 years in the state legislature, 8 years county mayor, and now I'm in the federal government, and it's just. Don't trust it. And what's wrong with transparency? And what do they fear? They can't turn this stuff over to us. Well, you know, what do they fear? Why are all these records redacted? And why are they, it's national security. That's a bunch of BS. You and I both know it. There's something more going on.
Yeah,
and
to
we
your
need to get
point,
to the
why
bottom
aren't
of it.
they releasing everything about the like going to another conspiracy?
No, it's not a
About the
conspiracy.
Kennedys,
It's a reality. Why are they
because
not?
what are they so
national
afraid
security.
of people
every
finding
time,
out?
Every time every president runs on, I'm going to release this, I'm going to release that, and then they don't because, and I don't know. I think some of them are compromised, and I think these guys, these folks pull them off to the side and say, hey, we can't do this because it's going to expose some agency like the CIA or the FBI or something. There's no sacred cows. Let's get on with it. I'm a big boy. Let's. I came here to do some stuff. Let's get it on.
Awesome. All right, with that, I want to finish it by saying, the truth is out there, and I want to believe. That's a reference. All right, I want to tell everybody before we leave, we got our first fan mail. Letter in the mail from Donna from Arizona.
Of course. I mean, no big deal, guys. I mean, yeah. Arizona,
So
dude,
she
represent.
wrote, I got a handwritten note.
Wow.
But I shared the letter that she sent.
Where do you get a couple of handwritten death threats, dude? That's the ones you put them up on your wall. I got a book.
So we want to say thank you to Donna, and then also
Thank
we
you,
had
Donna.
thank you.
Oh, Donna. Oh, see, you
We
got to
did-
work that into your deal, man. I'm just giving you this free stuff.
Right. Okay. So we did have a listener question.
Treat you
Okay.
balanced.
Noah from North Carolina, which that's pretty awesome. None of us are from North Carolina, but Noah asked, "What is the most fun part of DC? Not the legislating side. What do you do when you have downtime?"
Me, I sleep
Yeah.
in
Where-
my
when is there
office. I go to
downtime?
bed.
That's what I said, where is the
Funnest
downtime?
I have is when
Do
they
we-
bang that gavel and I'm heading out the door going to the airport.
I don't get to see DC. Like the first week that we were here, I saw the monuments with my family, and now it's like the only time I see anything other than the Capitol is whenever I get in a car and I'm being driven to like some meeting,
Yeah.
like at the Treasury Department. It's like, oh, on the way to Treasury, it's like, oh, look, there's a Washington Monument. How neat. But other than that, I show up.
I came
So-
here as a patrol boy in 1976, so I've seen it all.
All four of us sleep in our offices, right? I do.
Yep.
So I wouldn't do it any other way. It's convenient, all that. So I don't know.
Y'all have mice?
I haven't seen any. Have
Really?
you?
Oh, yeah. Man, I used to sleep on my floor, and I remember I was talking to my wife, and I go, ooh, there goes a dust bunny, like a rolling dust ball going by, and I thought, wait a minute, air's not on. I said, ain't no dust on this dadgum floor. That was a mouse. And I was like, well, what the heck?
Well, I did enjoy sleeping in my office.
Sleep up on you got a couch?
No, I've
Mouse
got
ain't
a
gonna
bed.
hurt you. They're more afraid. It's like a
No,
snake. They're more afraid of you than you are of them.
I think for the people who may or may not know, by the time you get done with your day, I mean, it's time to go to sleep and then get up at 5:45 so I can see you at 6 a.m.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's 9:15 right now. We got work to do when we.
I'm up at 4:30. I'm on the baseball team.
4:30
that's
a.m.
No,
crazy.
tell them about your exploits on the baseball team.
Oh yeah, I'm meteoric rise from fourth string to third. Somebody went to the outfield. So
I don't think people know what the baseball team is.
we have
It's
a congressional baseball team. It's not softball. It's a tradition they've been doing since the 20s. And these guys, I mean, they take it way serious. It's like crazy serious.
Very
It's the
serious.
real deal, man.
This is known. This is where Steve Scalise was actually shot years ago.
years ago. Yeah.
Do they
Yeah.
wear the eye stuff? What are
And
eye black?
when we play at
No
night,
glare.
they do. A lot of the guys do. Yeah.
So y'all get up at 4:30.
I get up at 4:30. I open the gym at 5. I'm on the bus or on the van, and we about 6 of us all carpool to it, and then we get there a little bit before 6 and warm up.
You watch like baseball movies, like Field of Dreams,
And get fired up.
Major League, Moneyball. To get
That's
fired
cool.
up.
That's
Kids from
that's
left
a very cool
field.
movie, actually.
Moneyball's one of
I
my
watch the
favorites.
American History Channel before I go to bed. That's all I watch usually. Just something. It's like it hadn't been tampered. History Channel ain't no freaking history.
It's ancient aliens.
Yeah, no, they don't even. I mean, they're making knives or something. I said, this ain't freaking history, man. Come on, call it the Discovery Channel or
So
something.
did you make the team, or are you spitting sunflower seeds on the bench?
Well, I'm on the team, baby. Has the Baptist Church got a bus? Of course I'm on the team.
What position?
First base. Are you not listening? Did he not listen to this whole
I didn't hear it.
I'm third string. I'm third string, dude.
Then you need to be stretching your jaws for your sunflower seeds. Then that's your
No,
warm-up.
no, I got in
Your
last
third
year. I
string.
got a hit. I didn't get a hit. I popped up. Everybody said, "Oh, you got a hit." I got first one. I was so tight from sitting on the bench because it rained, and I did a little pop up. First one, I swung at the first one. It was a real slow pitch, and I thought, dang, I better back this thing off. And then he threw it at my head, and I fell over, and I was so slow, it was just, and I fell over. And then the third one, I popped it up, and then, but we were up 9-0, so it really didn't matter. The coach, Roger Williams, says, yeah, I told Burchett, I said, get the bats, like he was going to pick up all the bats so we could get off the field. The next thing I know, he's out there on the field hitting, like he's,
It's House versus Senate.
No, it's the Democrats versus
Republicans.
Republicans, and we have senators. We're jacked this year, man. We are freaking jacked. We got some ball players. Them guys can hit. I mean, I'm the oldest guy on the infield. I'm 58. Those are some guys in their 30s, and and it's a real deal, man.
I can't wait to see it. All right.
June 14th.
All right, that's all the time that we have for our episode of Fresh Freedom. If you'd like to submit an audience question, click on the link in the description below, and it might get asked in the future episodes. We'll see you next time on the Fresh Freedom Podcast.